All right, folks, it's time for a 7th video in our Mk262 cloning series. This is like video number 7 of 100. We're just going to keep on going, man, until we run out of powders or cool stuff to test. Because I'm enjoying it, feel like I'm learning stuff, and you guys are still watching, so by God, we're just going to keep on going. I'll create a separate playlist for this, so, you know, if you're coming back looking for just these videos and don't want to swim through all of the other garbage I put out, you can just go to the Mk262 playlist. The basics of it are, we've got our Black Hills factory ammunition, designated by the military as Mk262 Mod 1. We're trying to duplicate this stuff. We've covered a lot of ground in 7 videos, and I'm not going to rehash it all right now. But back to video 1, where we tore apart some rounds and we talked about powder choice. That's one you definitely want to jump back to at the very least. The powders for today are going to be IMR8208 XBR. This guy's getting requested a lot, and if you search around the internet, people use this powder in this application a lot. It's a little on the fast side for me, fast burning side for me, which we talked about a lot in video 1. So we're going to have to be careful with this guy, make sure our pressures don't get away from us here, but we'll see how it performs. The other powder for today is Alliant AR-Comp. So this powder's been around several years now, but it's still relatively new, and it's a little slower burning than an IMR8208 XBR. AR-Comp is, I've seen it compared a lot to Reloader 15. It's kind of like Reloader 15 with some of the modern improvements applied. The temperature stability coatings and, I don't know, flash suppressants and stuff. I don't know if this has that or not, but whatever. You get what I'm saying, right? This is kind of a new and improved Reloader 15 is what I've read. And I may just be, regurgitating nonsense, but it seems like a decent description to me. Like we did in the last video, you know, we've tested some with the Nosler 77 grain bullet and the Sierra 77 grain bullet. In the last video, we trimmed it down to where we were only testing the Sierra, and I want to stick with that today here. This is going to be, we're going to be shooting the Sierra 77 grain with Canlure, the 9377G. It's been shooting amazing for us. Now on the primer side of things, we've switched over to the Remington 7.5 primers. That's what we shot the last few videos. In the last video, I picked a couple of our loads and shot them both with the Remington 7.5 and also the CCI number 41. This is what we started off the series with before I was able to get a hold of the Remingtons. And in the last video, we saw, with one powder, we saw a slight increase in velocity with the CCI 41, and then with another powder, we saw a pretty substantial increase in velocity. So we're going to do that again today as well. Our main 50 shots are going to be with the Remington, but then we'll have 10 shots of comparison rounds that are loaded with the CCI number 41. So we're going to continue to use Lake City brass, just like the Black Hills factory ammunition. And this is going to be the 4th firing on this brass. And I ran into a little bit of a problem. I've already got this stuff primed up and prepped, ready to go. I'm just ready to start dumping powder. But I started getting some loose primer pockets this time. And what I did is, whenever I felt a primer pocket that was a little bit looser than I would like, I took a Sharpie and marked them red. So I want to track these guys today and see if we see either blown primers or primers that are much flatter with these guys. And I ended up having 9 of them that I marked. So we'll use those 9 in our lowest charge weights. So hopefully it won't be a problem. But for the next video, I'm either going to need to go to get a hold of another batch of brass, or we might switch back to the CCI primers, because primer pockets that are loose with the Remingtons have still been okay in the CCI number 41s. Because we kind of ran into that with the first 50 pieces of brass that we started the series with. We were shooting CCI 41s, everything was fine. We switched to the Remingtons, and I immediately started feeling some primer pockets that were looser than I liked. So we switched to a fresh batch of once fired Lake City, and 2 or 3 firings down the line here, they're starting to get loose as well. So I'm not sure which way we'll go, but most likely we'll just switch back to the CCIs in the next video. So let's talk about load data. Like I said, IMR8208 XBR is very popular, and people shoot it with the 77 grain bullets a lot. Now, Hodgdon Hodgdon has load data with the 77 grain Sierra, and they show a max charge of 23.2 grains at 55,000 PSI. So that's 223 pressures. Just looking around at the discussion on the internet, and actually the comments section from previous videos when you guys have been requesting 8208 XBR, 23.8 comes up a lot as a charge weight people like to shoot, and 23.7 and kind of that upper 23 range. So what I want to do is I want to start with Hodgdon's max charge. So 23.2 is where we're going to start. And like I said, this stuff's a little faster burning than I would like. I don't want to make jumps that are too big. So let's shoot 0.2 of a grain increments, which will take us from 23.2 up to 24.0. So we'll see whether we can make it all the way to 24.0 without blowing our face off. AR-Comp is a little bit harder to track down data on. Alliant has data for the 77 grain Sierra Match King, and they show a charge weight of 22.1 grains, and that is 223 pressures. I found reports of people shooting all the way up to 23.4 grains, which seems crazy. But what I want to try is, let's start just under what Alliant says is their max. So let's go to 22.0 grains. Let's shoot 0.3 of a grain increments, and that'll take us up to 23.2 grains. That might be a little bit too hot, but we'll find out. There's only one way to find out, and that's to shoot it. So 22 up to 23.2. Now, another factor that we've got that we always need to take into consideration when we're looking at our load data from our load data sources is overall length. We're trying to match our Black Hills factory ammunition as closely as possible. And when we measured these 50 rounds, we came up with an average overall length of 2.246. So that's what we've been trying to match. All of the load data you find is going to be at 2.260. So we're about 15,000 shorter on overall length. Bullet farther down in the case is going to increase the pressure. So that's another thing, that we're keeping in mind here. So since we're all the way on video number 7, it may be an appropriate time for a very quick safety brief. I always like to start from the assumption that anyone who's making their own ammunition is already coming into this realizing, like, this is a little dangerous. I need to be careful. But maybe some of you guys are new. This series is bringing in people to the channel who either maybe they don't reload or they're just wanting to get started and they don't know. So rule number 1 is never copy a load from an idiot on YouTube. That's not to say this series has no value. Hopefully I can point you in the right direction for powders and primers and all of that junk, but directly copying loads is super stupid, especially in a series like this where all of the charges we're shooting are over published maximums for the most part. We are pushing the extreme limits, coloring way outside the lines. So this is really a bit of an advanced undertaking, right? You want to get comfortable with more standard charges. You want to learn how your gun acts. You want to start working up charges and seeing what signs your gun gives you when you're approaching pressure, because that is vastly different between guns. In my gun, we found that in the Black Hills ammunition, there weren't any signs. Now, in our previous videos, we've been finding that with my gun, the first sign of pressure is an ejector mark, you know, the round ejector mark, and if you go a little farther, it starts smearing. I had somebody comment on a video just the other day that said, you know, ejector marks really aren't a thing. Like, your primers look fine, so yeah, you should just ignore those ejector marks. I could not disagree more, especially for the test gun we're shooting now. Now my Colt LE6920, which is a 16-inch 5.56, that gun ejector marks everything. Factory ammo, pretty light loads, stuff like that. That gun just likes to leave an ejector mark. So in that gun, that advice probably would be okay. But in the gun I'm shooting now, it doesn't do that. Standard loads leave the case head looking perfectly fine. So that ejector mark means pressure in this gun where, you know, my other gun, it doesn't necessarily mean we're getting towards trouble. So start low, learn your gun, work your way up, watch my videos and take guidance about components perhaps, but just simply copying the loads does not account for your gun, your altitude, your humidity, your pressure, your moon phase, or the position of the International Space Station. We're all going to be different and our loads are going to be different. So that's how this game is played. So now that we're on the same page, let's start let's start weighing some powder. So both of these powders are extruded powders. The 8208 XBR is a little bit of a shorter cut, which means that it runs through powder measures or powder dispensers a little bit better than the longer cut of the AR-Comp. And I think it has a pretty big influence on the popularity of 8208 XBR. Makes loading with it a little bit easier. What I'm doing is using the Lyman Gen 6 to initially weigh it out, and then just trickling it up until it's perfect, or close to perfect. All right, so I've got our charges of IM ARA 8208 XB ARA weighed out. So let's see if I can get bullets seated before I spill them everywhere. Always a challenge. My seating die is still set from the last video, which was a Bob's Bullets video. So let's just start from scratch. All right, 2.246, that is our number. And a little bit of crimp like we've been doing. Pretty light, nothing crazy, and that's our first round ready. I talked about the extra rounds I'm doing with the CCI number 41 primers, right? Those are the first 5 I'm seating here. Now we switch to our regular rounds with the Remington primers. So that's pretty much it. Neither one of these powders are going to be, heavily compressed or anything like that. Here, 8208 XBR, pretty full case, but nothing crazy, nothing remarkable here about bullet seating. So I'll turn the camera back on if something interesting happens, but otherwise I'll probably just see you guys on the range. All right, folks, I made a little bit of a screw up. You remember those loose primer pockets that I made the red mark on? Well, so our first group of 8208 XBR is going to be using those pieces of brass. But the problem was, I loaded my 8208 XBR and then I spun my reloading tray around like an idiot. So on the AR-Comp side of things, the max charge has got the brass with the loose primer pockets. So that might be fun. That's going to be interesting. We'll have to see how that goes. But we've got like 11 groups to shoot before we get there. So let's just start at the beginning. We've got a target at 100 yards. This is my gun. There are many like it, but this one is mine. It has an 18-inch white oak armament barrel, and all of the other details will be down in the description. So let's start out 23.2 grains of 8208 XBR. This is one of those fun days of filming when the sun is going in and out of the clouds, so the brightness is going to be all screwed up. That's okay. So the temperature today is about 90 degrees and 60-something% humidity, so it is super duper comfortable out here. I've had the gun and the ammo sitting outside for at least an hour, so it should be all up to temp and all that good stuff. So let's start out. 23.2 grains of 8208 XBR, targets at 100 yards. 3/4 inch dots. So I think I've gone a little bit too heavy on the caffeine today. That first shot did not feel good, the one that dropped low, but the others I settled down a little bit and put them right in there. So That should have been a better group than it was. So this group here, let's make them all good shots so that we don't have to have excuses. 23.4 grains. That's a little better. Okay, 23.6, and this one is with the Federal primers. And then once we do this group, we'll switch over to the CCI primers, but here we go. No pressure, no pressure. Just broke my cheek weld just to make a joke. Dang. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, same load, 23.6 grains of 8208 XBR, and this time it's with the CCI number 41 primer. Okay, so the gun didn't go off that time. Interesting. I got myself a failure to feed. Now, if you didn't watch the last video with this gun, which was with the 55 grain Bob's bullet and the 55 grain Hornady, I did turn the adjustable gas block down on this guy. And it's shooting super smooth today. I was actually going to comment on, man, I'm glad I turned this gas down because now this gun feels very smooth, lighter recoil and everything. But the brass isn't going very far, so I think, you know, I might just have the gas a little bit too low. I certainly don't blame the powder or the load on this. All right, what do we got? 2 more shots. Yep, another malfunction here. Dang it. And this has kind of boogered up this case and dented it. Crap. All right, didn't even lock the bolt back. Something's going on here. So if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna tear apart my gun real quick. Okay, so I looked the gun over. I don't see anything weird going on. I think the gun just started to get a little bit dirty. We're about 75 rounds in since the last time it was cleaned. So I guess that's what's going on. So I went ahead and turned up my adjustable gas block just a touch. Hopefully that will get us functioning again. Because we certainly didn't do those CCI 41 rounds justice as far as the group went. I think a good portion of that was on me. So there's no scary pressure signs to speak of so far. So we are moving on. 23.8 grains of 8208 XBRs next. So I am pleasantly surprised. Still not seeing any pressure signs. Not so much as a ring from the ejector. So last up, 24.0 grains. All right, so finally there on that last load, 24 grains, I did start getting some ejector smears, which we'll look at later on here. But overall, that was a really good showing from 8208 XBR. We got up to the velocity we were looking for, and yeah, it just did better than I thought it would. Shows you what I know. All right, so we're moving over to AR-Comp. First up is 22.0 grains. 22.3 grains. Wow, that was a pretty big jump in velocity there for just 0.3 of a grain. Interesting. All right, I'm going to take a little break. We're 2/3 of the way done. Maybe give the barrel a few minutes to cool down a bit. Okay, we're back from our little break. First up, 22.6 grains. Well, crap. That last shot felt pretty good, but it screwed up my group. Okay, here's that same load, 22.6 grains of AR-Comp, this time with the CCI number 41 primer. All right, velocity was almost exactly the same, but look at that standard deviation number with the CCI 41. Very impressive. Next up, 22.9 grains. All right, no scary pressure signs so far. So we're going to go ahead and shoot this last one, 23.2 grains of AR-Comp. And remember that 4 out of 5 of these are ones that I marked with loose primer pockets. So this might be fun. We'll see how they'll shoot. Yeah, pretty good little ejector smear on that first one, but the primer didn't pop. All right, my gun's weirding me out again. It didn't lock the bolt back, and I could feel as I was going along there that I was getting less and less gas. So, yeah. Again, I don't think it had anything to do with the powder or the ammo. I think it's all about my adjustable gas block. Yep, we definitely got some pressure signs there on those. So, let's get back to the bench and have a look. All right, let's start out with a look at our brass. First up, our max charge of 8208 XBR. Let's grab a couple of these and have a look. Nothing serious here at all. Let's see if we can spot. Yeah, there's a little bit of a swipe there on that first guy. But overall, not bad. There's another swipe. So just the very first signs of pressure here with our max charge of 8208 XBR. Very good stuff. I thought it would be worse at these velocity levels. So pretty happy about our 8208 XBR pressure signs. These are from the max charge of AR-Comp. And keep in mind, this was 2,785 feet per second. So these have some pretty significant swipes. And several of them raised some pretty nasty burrs. Let me see if I can find you a good one. Yeah, it looks like this one here is probably the worst. And so So that angle looks just kind of like a normal swipe, but you look from the side, kind of raised up. A pretty gnarly burr. So this is definitely one step farther on the pressure side of things when compared to our highest charge of 8208 XBR. This is not something I would want to shoot regularly. A little bit too much. It was interesting though, because these were, 4 of these 5 had the loose primer pockets and didn't really see any terrible flattening, and we didn't pop any or pierce any or anything like that. Looks like that one might have got a little bit of rim damage. There we go. See the straight line where your extractor grabs on. See if we can actually spot a bend. Now, if it's there, it's pretty slight. All right, so this is one step down with the AR-Comp, 22.9 grains. There's a swipe there on that guy, but it may be from a previous firing because none of the others show much of anything. So this was really good. I didn't see anything to worry me at all at the 22.9 level. All right, let's start out by talking about a couple of the weird things that happened to us. This group right here, 23.8 grains, I had one shot that landed 16 inches low. The other 4 shots in that group were fine. We also had one down here with AR-Comp that shot, you know, what is that, about 4 inches high. Add into this the function issues we had and the adjustment I needed to make to my gas block. I need to do a serious inspection of my gun before the next video. I think well, I don't know. Actually, I've got this is the bottom half of my piece of poster board that I cut off the bottom of this. This is the bullet hole from that shot. It's not a keyhole. It's not weird in any way other than the fact that it's 16 inches lower than it should have been. Same thing there. That looks like a nice, perfectly round hole from a bullet that was flying well. So I don't know what the heck is going on. It almost has to be a minor baffle strike in my suppressor, or perhaps my chronograph is a little too close to the bore axis and I hit the chronograph or just grazed the chronograph as it was going over my magnetospeed chronograph. And with the function problems, I'm wondering, maybe I've got a gas tube that's cracked on me or something, because that was really weird as well. So I've got some inspection and repair to do before the next video, but it didn't really screw up our test much, you know. The weird stuff was pretty well defined and easy to see. So 8208 XBR shot outstanding. Like I said, back to that first group, I think that was my first shot and I was feeling a little bit wobbly. I think that was on me. So these first 3 groups were outstanding. Even with that one that was out, you know, 678, a 608, and a 452. Just awesome shooting. And then the group with the CCI primers, this is where I started having function issues. So I'd have to go back and look to be sure. But, well, for one, I was messing around with the gun and breaking position and all of that stuff. And also several of the rounds that had that feeding problems got jammed up and, you know, physically damaged. Like one of them had a big old dent in the shoulder. And I'm sure that it's possible that the bullets either got set back a little bit or got their concentricity, you know, banged out of whack. So I'm not sure that the group opening up here with our CCI number 41 primer is legit. The velocity, we saw an increase of 30 feet per second with the CCI number 41 over our Remington primer. And like I said, we made it up to 24. We hit our velocity target, right? 2750 to 2760 is what we've seen from the Black Hills ammunition. This is an outstanding standard deviation number that is as good or better. I'd have to double check my notes on the Black Hills, but it wasn't much. If it was better than that, it wasn't much. So excellent performance from 8208 XBR. Now what I suspect is, since I saw, a pretty good jump in velocity here with the CCI 41, so the CCI 41 23.6 or 23.8 might have been where we started seeing pressure signs. I don't know. But with our federal primer, we got pressure signs at 24 that weren't terrible, but they were there. So backing down to 23.8 would probably be the better plan. And it just so happens that that's what a whole lot of you guys told me that you shot. So excellent performance from 8208 XBR. Down to AR-Comp, except for, this first guy having that crazy flyer, the groups weren't bad, right? A 727, and then this 1.04 incher, I think that was one of those situations, where the point of impact kind of shifted, right? Our first two groups were a little bit low, and then after this guy that kind of split the difference, then they seemed to hold this higher pattern. It's pretty slight, but I think that's probably maybe what was going on here at 22.6. But once the that point of impact settled back down, our top groups here were excellent. 634, 761, and a 438. Now, of course, 438 at our 23.2 grains, that was just more pressure signs than I wanted to see. But that's no problem, because we've got 22.9 grains, which showed no pressure signs, still shot a pretty darn good group, and matched our velocity from our Black Hills ammunition. 2759, that's just about perfect. Now, strangely enough, with this powder, the CCI primer didn't really see much of a velocity increase, only 3 feet per second, 2725 to 2728, but it had a unsustainably low standard deviation number of 1.7. So I'm very happy with both of these powders. I mean, this is good shooting, especially AR-Comp. This load's definitely going to go into our list of good loads. We hit our velocity, we didn't have pressure, so that's good stuff. So this was a pretty good day on the range. So the last couple of videos, we've stuck to some pretty popular options. And I think in the next Mk262 video, I want to go off the board a little bit. Try some stuff that, for one, I'm not terribly familiar with, and I also don't see out there a lot being discussed. First, hydrogen lever evolution. The burn rate seems about right, and I'm curious to see if we can get enough in the case to get up to the velocities we're looking for. The other is Power Pro 2000 MR. Some of the load data out there for this stuff shows some pretty silly velocities, so I'm hoping that this might be just the right application to let this guy shine. And speaking of our next Mk262 video, it's supposed to rain all this week, and then my elk season comes in on Saturday, my archery elk season. So I'm making no promises on this one, but it'll be as soon as possible. So I think that's where we'll leave it. If you like the cut of my jib and would like to help me keep it maintained and in good working order, come to patreon.com/reloading. It's where all the cool people are hanging out, and it gets you access to these videos a couple days early. So I will see you guys next time.